Today I'm going to be making a classic New Orleans roast beef po' boy, just like they make him at the Parasol restaurant and bar in New Orleans. I was watching Triple D the other day, or Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, and saw this being made and said, I gotta have this. So let's get started and make this classic New Orleans roast beef po' boy. I'm going to make one change to the recipe right off the bat. They use a round roast for the roast beef. Top or bottom, it doesn't matter. There's no fat, which means no flavor. So I'm going to use a chuck roast, which does have fat and flavor. Now fill the pot with water until it covers the roast by about an inch. Now are you ready for this? That's all you put in the pot. No seasonings, just water. But you got to trust me and stick with me. It all works out in the end, and it's very delicious. Now bring it to a boil, reduce the heat to medium-low, cover, and let it simmer for an hour and a half to 2 hours, just until it's cooked through. You're not trying to cook it until it's tender. Now let's make a faux roux. And no, I'm not talking about a fake kangaroo. I'm talking about a roux, which is equal parts fat and flour mixed together and cooked together. This is not cooked, so that's why I'm calling it a faux roux. I could have just said we're making a thickener for the gravy, but that wouldn't have been nearly as funny as talking about a fake kangaroo. That's definitely a wolf pit first. I've never talked about a kangaroo on this channel. So in a large bowl, add all-purpose flour, black pepper, granulated garlic, kosher salt, vegetable oil, and kitchen bouquet. Now give it all a good mix until everything is well combined. Once you have a bowl full of what looks like clumps of mud from the bottom of your shoe, it's done. Now set this aside until you're ready to make the gravy. Now here's what the chuck roast will look like after 2 hours. Now remove it from the pot, reserve 5 cups of the liquid, and let the meat cool. Here's the chuck roast after it's drained and cooled, and it is definitely not the most appetizing thing you want to see. But again, it does get better. Now slice it against the grain, and it doesn't really matter how thick or how thin you slice. If you'd like a full printable copy of this recipe and many more, visit thewolfpit.com. Now this is just a matter of preference. If you want to trim all the excess fat and discard it, that's fine. But I like fat, so I'm going to leave it in. Now add 5 cups of broth back into the pot and bring it to a boil. And then add your ball of mud. Faux roux. Gravy thickener, that's right. But it's not only a thickener to the gravy, it's going to add flavor and color. Break it apart and whisk it in. And it should start to thicken up in about 1 or 2 minutes. If it gets too thick, add a little bit more broth. At this point, don't worry about the little lumps in the gravy. Once the meat is done, the lumps will be gone. Then add all the meat back to the pot. Now give it a good mix until all the meat is covered with the gravy. Now the Parasol put the meat and gravy in a pan covered with foil and finished in the oven. At this point, I don't think it really matters whether you finish it in the oven or on the stovetop. The stovetop is easier for me, so I'm going to cover, reduce the heat to low, and let it simmer for an hour and a half to 2 hours until the meat is falling apart. Now here's the meat after simmering for 2 hours, and at this point, I was ready to forego the sandwich and get a fork and just eat the meat by itself. It not only smells good, but does it look good or what? It's got to be the fake kangaroo, faux roux, gravy thickener that makes it look so good. Here's a whole loaf of French bread, and French bread is absolutely mandatory. A po' boy literally is not a po' boy without French bread. Now I'm going to cut the loaf of French bread in 3 pieces. Now slather a very generous amount of mayonnaise on each piece of bread. Stop it. To whoever's saying, it would be so much better if he toasted the bread. Stop being so impatient. Just wait for the sandwich to be finished. Once you slathered on an artery-clogging amount of mayonnaise, add the meat. And don't just add a little bit of meat, add a Hungry Jack amount of meat. That way you don't have to sing the song, Hungry, Hungry Jack, to gobble 'em down and the plate comes back for Hungry Jack. For my own sanity, I hope some of you remember that commercial. Once you've added a Hungry Jack amount of meat on the bottom of the bread, let's add the toppings on the top. Let's start with a layer of dill pickles, a layer of homegrown hothouse store-bought tomatoes, and a couple handfuls of shredded iceberg lettuce. Now things really get bizarre. You place the whole sandwich in a 400-degree oven for about 5 to 7 minutes to toast the bread. At this point, I was thinking I cannot wait to eat hot lettuce and hot tomatoes. But I hung in there and cooked it just like it's supposed to be cooked. And here it is all nice and toasted after 7 minutes in a 400-degree oven. And there you have it, a Nolan's classic, roast beef po' boy. And like I said earlier, I thought toasting the whole sandwich with lettuce and tomato after it was made was really bizarre. Even though the lettuce and tomato were a little bit soggy after being baked, it all worked, came together, and was absolutely delicious. And in just a couple seconds, you're going to see why they also call it a sloppy roast beef po' boy. The Colonel's finger-licking chicken ain't got nothing on this po' boy. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope you give this a try. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.